Hello, everybody, and yeah, I do sincerely apologize for how you feel this morning, but I hope you had a good time last night. To introduce myself, my name is Erin, and I am the culture developer at Graham Games, which, if you don't know, is the studio behind titles like 1010, Merge 6, Bouncy, the Merge franchise, and we're based here in London with an office in Istanbul. So I think that the first question that I need to address is, what is a culture developer? Because it is hands down the #1 question I get. And the thing is, at Graham Games, we view our culture and the environment that we've created for our employees as really critical to the success that we've experienced. And in some ways, we view it as a product, just as we view any of our games as a product. And in the same way as we maintain and iterate on our games and keep an eye out for bugs and make sure they're performing as best they can, we do the same thing with our culture. So today what I'm going to talk about is kind of why we do that, how we do that, kind of the principles we maintain in order to do that, and what we're going to do going forward. All right. Oh wait, the clicker is here, sorry. All right, so I mean, this quote, well, not ours, is a concept that we really abide by, which is that you can't really externally impose a culture on people. A culture has to be organic, it has to be bottom up, and it has to be a product of the people within your organization. So each and every time that we bring a new person into the organization, we do a lot of due diligence in order to ensure that both our vibe is going to work for them and that they're going to fit in, not only fit in to our company culture, but also going to actively work to contribute something to it, to develop it, and to change it for the better so that we can then better make games. As I said earlier, at Graham Games, we view our company culture as just as critical and important to the success we've experienced as kind of any of our titles, because we kind of believe that without the environment that we have, our people aren't really going to put themselves out there. They're not going to try new things. They're not going to feel that they can be themselves. And we view that freedom as critical to kind of what we're able to do, the speed at which we're able to produce games, and kind of what we're able to, give you guys, the players. But I think that one of the critical things that we really work to maintain when people come into Graham, and also, everyone who is within Graham, is that every single person within the company feels a kind of distinct responsibility for contributing to and maintaining the company culture. This can't be done just by me. Obviously, it's part of my job, but it is a part of every single person's job in our organization. And when we're bringing people into the company, when we implement systems, when we implement processes, that's something that we really make sure to underline, that a culture cannot function on its own. It cannot just be put out there in the world and then keep on existing. It needs to be, contributed to and maintained by every single person in the organization. But yeah, so kind of the basis of this culture that we have, the theory behind the whole thing is that basically ultimately games are fun. And if you don't have a fun, creative environment where, as I said earlier, people feel they can be themselves, they can put themselves out there, and that they can enjoy themselves and kind of play around while they're working, then that kind of sentiment is not going to be reflected over into your games. So if people feel that they're being top-down told what to do, if they have arbitrary rules, if they have arbitrary kind of directions from middle management, top management, then they're not going to kind of imbue the work that they do with the creativity, the freedom, and the fun that makes great products, ultimately. And as it turns out, this kind of system that we create where people feel that they can be themselves and they can put themselves out there and they're happy and they're enjoying themselves is actually a positive feedback loop. Because when you put as much kind of benefits and enjoyment for your employees into your culture, then they're going to kind of do their darndest. They're going to work as hard as they possibly can in order to contribute back into the company that allows them to have this kind of creative, free, open environment. And so we've actually found that, I think that a lot of people see company benefits and they see freedom and they see things like we have DIY Fridays every Friday where people feel that where people can explore their own projects, where they can do their own thing. I think that a lot of people view that as kind of external, as band-aids that are meant to appease employees. But for us, we actually do view that as critical to what our employees are able to do and critical to the way that our company kind of maintains balance. And yeah, so I think that what is really another misconception about this whole concept is that we're just screwing around all the time in our office, and that's not true at all. I think that we really we work very, very hard, and therefore we play really, really hard. The work that we do, the work that we contribute to the organization, allows us to trust each other, and it allows us to be able to let loose and feel that we're comfortable with the people around us and to truly enjoy ourselves in the work environment. Because if that's not the case, then isn't really conducive to games that are fun, games that are enjoyable. And so yeah, so basically, ultimately, the kind of central sentiment to our culture is if we've created an environment where people feel that they can be themselves, they can push themselves, they can kind of explore the limits of their creative potential, and ultimately that's what allows us to have great games. So the elements that our culture is based around, and obviously, as I said earlier, we iterate and we maintain our games all the time. So these are constantly morphing, constantly changing. But generally, it's based around a flat structure, constant iteration, a familial environment, learning from mistakes, and constant communication. So the flat structure is pretty self-evident, but basically, we have no boss except for data, is kind of the way that we think about it. There's no arbitrary directions, there's no arbitrary structure, there's no kind of top-down suggestions of what people are going to make. Everything is very grassroots. Most of what we do comes out of the prototyping process. It's very kind of ground up from our team. Constant iteration goes back to data again. We never really believe that we're done with what we do. That goes for culture, that goes for games, that goes for everything, that goes for systems. It's about always keeping an eye on the way that things can improve, the way that kind of systems can improve, the way that games can improve, and working quickly and effectively to make sure that that happens. In terms of familial environment, that goes back to what I was saying, which is that if people are comfortable, we do believe that they're going to do their best work for this industry and for the kind of products that we make. And learning from mistakes is kind of one of the most critical tenets, in my opinion. It means that we don't, excuses are kind of a waste of everyone's time. We really want an environment where people are constantly learning, where people are kind of willing to kind of screw up, recognize the way that they screwed up, and then iterate and build on that screw up in order to kind of make themselves better and make the company better. And finally, constant communication. This whole system does not work unless there is constant communication and trust. And kind of without that, everything would kind of fall to pieces. Yeah, so another, I think, funny but fun thing about this is like this whole concept of work-life divide is kind of a fallacy. And that's not to say that you shouldn't have your you time. You shouldn't be able to relax and kind of decompress at home. But we don't believe that you should have to put on a face at work, that you should have to be someone, that you should have to behave in a certain way around your colleagues. Because, again, going back to what I said earlier, we believe that when people feel that they can be themselves and they can be honest, they're then going to be more willing to take that risk, to put themselves out there and to try a new product, to throw out a maybe crazy idea that could ultimately turn into kind of a game changer for the company. But yeah. And so building on the failing, so yeah, our kind of company, if you know a little bit about Graham Games, at the beginning, we really kind of struggled to make a hit. We struggled to get a title out there. And so we've imbued our company culture with this belief that, your greatest successes, like 1010, our first hit, can come out of failure, can come out of struggle, can come out of mistakes that you've made. And I think that, like on our DIY Fridays, for instance, people are encouraged to try new things, to learn new things, to try out new programs, and kind of even if they screw up, at the end of every Friday, we kind of present what we've done. And even if you made zero progress, you couldn't figure something out, you ran into a bug, whatever, that is valuable information that you can share with the company and that we can collectively learn from, collectively develop on, and ultimately, hopefully, develop the company for the better. Okay. So basically, going back to the culture as a product idea. So basically what we mean is that the reason I exist is because we maintain our culture in a way that it's never stagnant. It's not really kind of encompassed into one little, shell. We are constantly looking for bugs. We're constantly on the lookout for things that aren't working for our people. And then kind of the moment that we stop doing that, same with our games. The moment we stop looking for bugs, the moment we stop ensuring that our games are the best they can be, things kind of start falling to pieces, because ultimately the people in your organization need to believe that kind of the organization is being diligent to ensure that the culture is working the best for everyone within it. And the minute it stops doing that, then kind of, again, the whole system falls apart. And yeah, so basically, to bring it back, I think that we believe that companies can really, really benefit from implementing cultures that aren't necessarily just grind-based, aren't necessarily just focused on output, but also are very focused on the input into their employees. And kind of when you maintain healthy, happy environments, you reduce turnover rate. We have experienced an output in product, and we really believe that it is a business imperative, that kind of the more you focus on your people, the more you focus on your environment, you're actually going to see an output, and you're going to see a difference in what your company is able to create. It has worked for us, so. And so as you guys might know, so this year we moved to London, and I think that it's actually an interesting moment in time to talk about this, but there's a lot of talk right now kind of in this industry about splitting headquarters with kind of the talk around Amazon or opening a second headquarters. And we moved our headquarters to London, and it's been a huge year for Graham Games, and it's not been without difficulty, and it's not been without kind of struggling with some of the roadblocks that come with trying to take a company and a culture from one place and kind of transport it to another. But we've actually learned quite a lot, and I think that we've seen a lot of our principles kind of tested, which is, we say that our culture is affected by each person that comes into it, but we've really seen that in practice this year, and it's been a fascinating experience to kind of build 2 new studios in a way, because we moved a lot of people from Istanbul as well, and kind of see how our culture grows and develop, and it will continue to do so as both of our studios continue to grow. And so in conclusion, I think that the most important sentiment that I hope that you all take out of what we do and what I've said today is that culture is important, but always iterating on your company and always iterating on your culture and your environment is critical. You can't just determine what a culture for a company is going to be and then try and project it on the people that come into your company, because it'll never work. It's inorganic. And so kind of just maintain diligence, maintain an awareness of what people want, what people are looking for, what works for people. And I think that we've ultimately found that that is what kind of results in the most honest and authentic and ultimately effective company culture. So and we're always expanding. We have positions on our page, so if you'd like to get in touch for London positions or on the off chance you are based in Istanbul, Istanbul positions, you can just check out our website, or you can come up, find out my contact details. So thank you guys for listening, and if you have any questions, do find me, or I can take questions now. Yes?
Could you tell us a bit about how your recruitment process is? How does it
Yeah.
work?
Absolutely. So we actually kind of, I think that a lot of companies experience a change in systems when they kind of expand beyond 20, 25 people, from small to mid-sized. And that's really where we had to implement a lot of systems into our recruitment process to kind of, before there was things that we did, but they weren't systematized. So what we did is we actually have quite a long interview process. So what we implemented was this kind of get to know you call. We call it a culture call at the beginning of the process. And there's a set of, so we have basically taken those core principles that we have, those 5 core principles, and we have, derived questions from them, or like kind of created questions that reflect on those principles. And we try and kind of get a sense of kind of the places people have worked, the things that have worked for them, the things that haven't worked for them, and kind of keep an eye out for what people, not only, we don't really look for fit, but we look for whether people whether people are willing and excited to bring something into our environment, to bring something into our culture. And then we have a test, usually if it's a technical role, a technical call, on-site interview, executive interview, and then ends with an offer if all goes well. Yes?
Some details regarding flat structure, top-down.
Yes? So basically the way that I try to explain it to people usually is, at Graham, you kind of are, the output that you get is the input that you put in, ultimately. And you are very much valued or kind of given responsibility based on, your ability to demonstrate what you're able to handle. And we have people with more experience, we have people with less experience, but those roles don't ultimately translate into some arbitrary kind of positionality in a structure. And we have a group of founders who founded the company, and then the rest of us, there's no arbitrary hierarchy. And I think that, that doesn't mean that we don't have people asking people for things, whatever, that's how a company works. But there's never there's never really any kind of you have to do this because he said so kind of situation that you would find yourself in. There's always the ability to question, and if you can prove based on data, based on evidence, based on anything that something shouldn't be that way, no matter how long or short you've been in the organization, then that's a totally valid point to raise. But yeah, I mean, I know it sounds kind of silly, but I think that the only boss arbitrary kind of structure we really do have is data and evidence. And that's really the only thing that you would have any arbitrary, non-arbitrary, sorry, any kind of, hard decision on would be based on that. Of course. Yeah.
My name is Joshua. Is this on? So I'll talk on that anyway. My name is Josh.
Hi.
I'm a junior designer from King. And one of the things you mentioned was pleasing everyone. So just like kind of two questions. How many employees do you have?
We're at 77 now.
77.
Okay. In 2 offices.
And then how do you actually do that? How do you please everyone? Different people.
I would avoid the word please. I think that it's about making sure that the system is working for as many people as possible, as well as possible. Obviously, there's ways that doesn't work all the time, but that goes back to the diligence point that I made earlier, which is I think that, I do one-on-ones. We have several people in our kind of ops team who do one-on-ones who keep an ear to the ground, and I think that it comes down to proactivity and diligence. So if there's something that isn't working, whether it is a relationship or a system or some grouping that isn't working, it's about really kind of paying attention to that and making sure that those issues are addressed, because we believe that if shit is going down, as it were, if it's allowed to fester, then that's kind of just going to grow, and there's going to be bitterness, and then the whole system kind of gets threatened. But yeah, I think it's just about listening to people, honestly, and listening to people as much as possible, and not getting up in the concept, getting caught up in the concept, of culture, and getting caught up in the concept of the company, but actually listening to how people react to it, and then performing actions and changing systems and altering things based on that. Yeah.
How are individuals that are either not performing up to expectations, or perhaps this individual has like a personal problem that's affecting their ability to work? I mean, how are these people addressed if there's a flat structure, like i.e. As much as I don't want to fire somebody, sometimes that needs to happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, how is that done if there's no clear hierarchy?
So, so ultimately, if there is an issue, I can't go too far into that, but ultimately, like, if there is a problem, usually people approach me, or they approach our COO, or they approach someone else who approaches someone. It's a very open environment. It's very conversant. Or and in the other direction, if there is an issue that someone is having, then we try and talk to that person, and we try and kind of get the rationale and the understanding for what is going on. And I think that in a structure like this, actually, issues become evident quite quickly, because it is so open, and because people work so closely together and so collaboratively, that if something's not working, it becomes evident quite quickly. And we try and talk to people individually, and to kind of get a sense, or if the person is not aware of the issue, aware of what's going on, to translate that to them, but also to figure out kind of how we can implement, whether it's learning or whether it's support or whatever, to make it work. And as you said, sometimes it doesn't. But I think that what we look for in those situations is not necessarily like, this is what you did, this is the end cutoff, but kind of a willingness to iterate on that and to improve and to kind of try and figure out how to make it work if it's not working.
Thank you. I also have a second question that kind of builds on that. As game developers, we know how important it is to kind of give the player the feeling of advancement in the game, and they need to feel like they're moving forward. In a flat structure, how do employees get that feeling that they're actually advancing within the company or advancing their career? If the structure is flat, then right? The only way to move is sideways, correct?
Yeah, but I think that is true. And I think that in our company, roles evolve, and they do. For instance, I started out as a content manager at Ground Games. And I think that, I mean, I can use my personal experience in the company as a kind of indicator of this. But I think that we're very good about recognition. And we're very good about kind of acknowledging when someone's kind of killing it, or when someone's good at has a skill, that even if it's not within their job description, a skill, and then kind of capitalizing on that and trying to make sure that that person feels that that skill is being utilized, and then that skill is being kind of recognized as well. And you're right, I mean, sometimes we don't have an arbitrary kind of, you know, junior developer, senior developer kind of path, but I do think that for the most part, that ability to kind of try out skills, to try new things, and again, as I mentioned in my speech, we have literally a day a week where you can work on personal projects, where you can try and develop a skill, where you can try and learn a new program. And I think that that ability to kind of try out new things, to move sideways, as you say, but also kind of to gain more responsibility in that way, yeah, it leaves people feeling somewhat fulfilled. Sorry, fulfilled, not somewhat fulfilled. Yeah.